Welcome back to the program. My guests are seated. Paul Alaje is the lead economist at SPM Professionals, and we have Adekole Ijogi, a political economist. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you so much for having
Yes, let's get started because we have quite a lot to talk about. But let me start with Paul and ask you a very fundamental yet very simple question, which is, what is poverty? Is it lack of money? Adekole, why are you laughing? No. Why are you laughing at my question?
No.
Okay, is it lack of money? Can you define poverty as lack of money?
Well, poverty is not just lack of money. It's one of the things that makes up poverty. It is lack of resources, whether physical, material, financial, spiritual, or emotional resources. When you lack money, people say you are financially poor. When you lack spiritual, they say you are spiritually poor. When you lack emotional, people say you are emotionally poor. So, but poverty could be rated in different, could be rated not just with financial measures, using financial as using your finance as an indicator. So it could also be lack of roads. So you can see people that have money but they don't have roads. So they say their infrastructure is poor. So it must not necessarily be lack of money that makes people not to be poor. We have, at least we know countries in the world where the leaders are so rich, yet the people are so poor. So what do we say? Do we say that the leaders are poor? Their minds are poor. That's what we say. Because if you are not poor in your mind, well, when you get to heaven, I'm not sure that you are going to be spending naira or dollar or pound sterling. So it takes weak mind to be corrupt to a very large extent. So for me, poverty is beyond just measuring it beyond money. Even though World Bank using economic indicator. So we have removed poverty, we have removed spiritual, emotional. So let's stay with economic way of measuring it. So World Bank and some other international organizations have created different measures, including UNDP. UNDP measure multidimensional poverty. And I think 2018 or so said about 89 million, over 80 million Nigerians are living in multidimensional. 87 million under multidimensional poverty. World Bank says if you have $1.90, and I think that will be reviewed to $2 very soon because of course inflation in dollar itself. That may be reviewed to $2. IMF is talking about 42% of Nigerian population that are living below the poverty line. Not that those above are rich. It means that those that are even below, they are about 42%. 42% be charitable of 200 million people. You are talking of something over 80 million. It aligns with what UNDP is talking about. But when you look at population of Ghana, if you look at population of quite a number of countries, even Egypt, you see that Nigerians can export poor people and they will fill the population, and we still have extra to collect back.
Okay. Adekole, this is not a laughing matter because it's really, it's really a serious matter.
No, it is very serious.
Very serious. So I think we should attack it that way.
Yeah.
You know, the next question to you, I asked Paul, what's poverty? Is it lack of money? How would you define poverty in Nigeria? Poverty with a Nigerian face. How does it look like? What is it? You're a political economist. How do you people define poverty? How can you, what would you say is poverty in Nigeria? Is poverty in Nigeria the same as poverty in America?
Poverty is poverty, whether it's in America or in Nigeria. But since you asked Nigeria specifically, and for the benefit of our viewers who might not be conversant with economic jargons, so to speak, in parentheses, I think poverty in Nigeria is general lack and poor standard of living, poor well-being with regards to daily living, basics of housing, transport, feeding, the basics, light, electricity, all of those indices with regards to Nigeria is when they say somebody is poor in Nigeria. Most times I like the analogy that Paul sometimes uses about how many meters to a restroom, toilet and stuff like that. All those indices come, but to speak succinctly about Nigeria and poverty, I think that when we're discussing poverty in Nigeria, we should not only look at the economic industries and standard of living, we should look at, and I run away from this word called average Nigerian, because what is the parameter for measuring an average Nigerian? Just a Nigerian. What is on your food basket? Now, I'm sure we'll go into the reason why Nigerians are poor, or why, but to say poverty itself, what do Nigerians ordinarily live on? Gari, bread, rice, pounded yam, beans. What quantity of that can be said to be sufficient to sustain our well-being, our body, our well-being, our families? Before we even go to the higher level of the kind of accommodation, the kind of house that you live, the kind of schools your children attend, the kind of transportation that is available for you, options. Do we have rail transportation? Do we have a cluster of buses? I mean, what is the cost of transportation? Then we now move to the one that is the determinant of them all, which is earning power. What is the Nigerian earning power? If the Nigerian earns 50,000 naira in the month, how much of that goes to house rent? How much of that goes to school fees? How much of that goes to family upkeep? You will now be able to determine whether the Nigerian, that particular Nigerian that we're talking about, is poor or not. And finally, as an economist, I would also like to add that one of the indices of calculating and checking whether a nation and its people are poor or not is when you look at their savings ratio. How many Nigerians can actually afford to do all of these things, family structured wise, and still put away some amount of money in for the rainy day?
We may actually also connect inflation to savings rate, because if you take a look at a country with high inflation, if you have high inflation, the purchasing power of people eroded. So if it's eroded, how much of the savings rate will we have in Nigeria? Now, savings rate is, I think, 1.5% now. Because of the MPR rates, is 11.5%. But we'll come to that a bit and see how we can correlate that. But back to you, Paul. What are the drivers of poverty in Nigeria? Because if you want to address a problem, you should take a look at what are the causes of that problem.
Well, there are a lot of drivers in Nigeria, but I will start from wrong policy that we are adopting. It's like somebody that has headache, and we say he should take Mismag. I don't know if pharmacists can. And so he says, well, don't worry, it's for your head to be cool.
Mismag is for your tummy.
It's liquid, so if you take that, don't worry, it's more from your tummy to your head. So you keep wondering the kind of... You see, I've studied about 106 countries' economy. Some of them are poor, and why they are poor, one of the countries is Nigeria, and countries that have actually taken people, including the entire population Nigeria has, in less than 30 years, from poverty, hunger, and deprivation to majority becoming prosperous. In fact, they have more than our entire population being prosperous. And I will zero it down on China. But before I stop on China, people say, oh, China. Give another example. South Korea. South Korea was sometimes ago very poor, but South Korea has adopted the same policy China is adopting. During COVID, Japan leaders promised every investor in real sector in China to come back to Japan, and they were going to support them to set up their equipment in their country. This is it. What we put first as a country is a wrong priority. And when you check most of the programs we have written, somebody asked me, are you saying the policies are not good? I'm not saying so. I'm just saying that, can you show me the results of those policies? If the results are taking people out of poverty, or if they are further entrenching people in poverty and hunger. So what is it? When you look at our contribution, don't use 2021, because the base year for 2021 is 2020, so it's so wrong. It's the wrong base year, which is 2020. So when you are using our contribution, what I'm saying is, what is contribution to agriculture to GDP? What's the contribution of manufacturing to GDP? And what is contribution of service to GDP? If you are looking at anything 2000 or 2001, those were years that are very unusual. So look at 2018, 2019, and below. And you can look at 2014, 2015. Our contribution to GDP for manufacturing is low. China understood it. South Korea understood it. They deliberately focus on environments that will grow manufacturing, especially the real sector, especially factories. We are not communicating factory first. Tell me, out of 36 state governors, which of them is focusing on industrializing the states? And we are decent jobs. Germany is the largest population in Europe. You don't hear of German farms. You hear of German machines. America, United States, is the largest in North America. What you hear is American technology, American infrastructure, not American farms. China, the largest in the world, I think about 1.4, you know. China is not, the fear Nigeria has is that if we don't go to farm, we will not eat. China should have more fears than we do, and America. China would rather produce and ensure that your economy depends on them because they will come and buy your raw material. Nothing stops us. We are not cursed to the farms. The farms are good. What we even energize the farm is when factories are functioning. People will now know that farms, that factory needs input. They will naturally need to go. But what do? With the good intention of central bank to support farmers, what have they, how have they repaid good intention of government back? The farmers. Have they repaid? They can say flood swept away our harvest. And you wonder if that farm is the only place where flood took place that was flooded. Do you understand my point? So the policy, the fiscal authority must align. When we say align, we are not saying they are not meeting. We are saying that from our policy, look at a fantastic document government brought, National Economic Development Plan, about 350 trillion naira, 85% of which will be coming from private sector. The question is how? What comes first? So for me, what other countries have done, which I've studied carefully, is they have reduced their onions. What is their onions? Inflation. You know, onions is in layers. They have deliberately scraped their onions to the least. Then they are focused on their factory. Because the jobs we are looking for, the development we are looking for, everything will lie in factory. And I'm not saying start by producing aeroplane. No. It could be start by producing pencils. Technology will take us from pencils to other ones. If you are not taking steps, India have started. India have started. Look at Thailand. So a number of countries understood that they have huge population, and the only way they can put their population in decent job with decent pay, with living wage, is to ensure that they do things that will make them, that we engage their youth. We have left our youth for long. That is why we have insecurity. That is why we have banditry. That is why we have kidnapping. Those youth have been left as agbero.
That's why we have ritual killings.
That is why we have ritual killings.
So disturbing.
So if we engage them, they said an idol's hand is the devil's workshop. The last time I checked that workshop, there is no hoes and cutlass there. It's guns, machetes, weapons, and all of these things that devil has. And that is what is sharing among young people. So if you truly want to have a lot of people come out of poverty, at the same time you want to reduce inflation, and you want to have the kind of economy, Manufacturer Association of Nigeria will not just be an association. It will be that the culture of our people, as a people, when you talk of Nigeria, what will come to mind is, when I see you, I want to manufacture your eyeglass. I want to manufacture your earrings. So those are simple things we can, in our country, say, we want to achieve manufacturing of X, Y, Z within the next 10 years or within the next 20 years. A leader that comes, and this is the takeaway I want to give Nigerians. 2023 is here. The leader we should support is the one that will communicate hopes to us. You cannot end kidnapping banditry with military guns and weapons. It will do its bit, and I'm happy military are trying their best. But the way to compensate Nigerian military is to have economic reforms that will take large number of people out of economic quagmire. And how do we do that? When military fight and they say there are options, you are just wicked. There are safety nets. There are programs of government. Private sectors are, private sector across different subsectors are doing well. But when you look at the sector, what do you see? On the street of Ibadan, you see long buses shortly reduce, continue to reduce. You know, the taxi people drive measures the economic of the environment. It measures it. Luxurious buses will reduce to normal buses, will reduce to half bus, will reduce to two-seater, will reduce to keke, will reduce to Okada.
Okay. From what you said, I gathered the policies, drivers. Do you have any other thing to say apart from that, or you just we sum it up and say, okay, policies?
Mr. Alaje is right. It's a policy choice that largely drives the economy. That's from the physical side. But what I want to add to what is also culture. He tried to talk, but he skipped it. I don't know why he dodged it. It's culture. Apart from policy, you have culture too. There's a Harvard professor, Douglas North, who alluded to that in one of his write-ups, that there's a central conservative truth that it's not only politics that's responsible for the growth of the society, but culture. So now we must begin to have, like Paul rightly said, that culture, that attitudinal change, that culture of production, that culture of establishing the mindset that it is business, and that, like I would say for the opt-in time, that economic thinking should drive political processes and not political processes driving economic thinking. It's about the economy. It's about our well-being. That we should begin to think business, that this easy laissez-faire attitude of importation, of go and import commodities from China or from wherever to sell off, buying and selling and trading, we should focus on production, engagement of economic activities within the Nigerian economy.
Okay, let's take a look at how much progress has been made in poverty reduction in the last 7 years, I guess, since this administration has come in. This administration has what they call the conditional cash transfer program. We saw what happened during COVID. The Minister of Social Development and is a long name.
Humanitarian affairs.
Yes, humanitarian affairs, giving money, cash at a time to people. We've also seen different intervention programs aimed at alleviating poverty. How do you measure really the progress of poverty reduction in the last 7 years? And just oppose it to what the president has promised Nigerians, that he wants to take out 100 million people out of poverty in 10 years. I think he mentioned that in 2019.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. No, okay, so the numbers is what we should go to. As a number reduced, and mark you, we are not talking of absolute number, we are talking in percentile. The percentage is increasing. In fact, 2022, the projection for Nigeria is that 8 million people will join the poverty bracket. So is the policy working? It is good that we are helping poor people with 5,000 naira. It is okay that we are helping them with 10,000 naira. But if you share 5,000 naira based on World Bank recommendation, will that take people out of poverty? The answer is no. We have seen countries, China actually practiced what we are doing now before. Before Jinping, the current leader of China, came and said, it does not make economic sense. You cannot take people out of poverty by doing that. What takes people out of poverty? I want to see someone on the streets of Nnewi, a Nigerian, perhaps from the north or from southwest or south-south. His job is to fix button. That's the only thing he knows how to do, in jackets. So we saw our suit in Nnewi, and he continues to sew, and he will do it so perfectly that you would think a machine fixed it. That's what happens in China. So we have not gotten there. How to take people without skills? Go to India. Women are now arranging solar panels, including LED screens. That's what women, and it's online. The information are physical. They now have I think, barefooted or so, or barefoot. So you can search about it. This is how to empower people, and in empowering people, we should start with women.
Yeah, because poverty has a woman face, really.
Yes.
No, it doesn't.
Poverty has more of a woman face.
The truth is, start with women.
True.
Women seem to be more responsible than men in taking care of families, children. A man
and they're most excluded and
sorry to cut you
disempowered.
short. There is the program, I think, in Brazil called Bolsa Familia that, try to get out Brazilian people out of poverty. And it worked. The other one by, I think, Professor Grameen also, I think in Bangladesh.
Bangladesh, yes.
Yes, also working with women in terms of microfinance, adopting the microfinance model, access to capital, and it helped, raise a lot of people from poverty.
Those wonderful programs, including the one I mentioned.
And I guess that's where some of these models came out from, like CCT and all of that.
Yes, but are they different from the program you mentioned earlier that government has adopted?
So why is ours not working as much as it should work?
Because theirs is investment-oriented, ours is consumption-oriented.
Or more like it's, what do you
give
call
me
it?
Money, I'm expecting you to give me. The policy we adopted for states coming to Abuja to share from national cake without baking one is the same policy we are now giving to the so-called poor people. We hear recently that subsidy may be removed, even though we are now hearing something else. I will be giving maybe 5,000 or so to about 40 million people. The question is, how are you going to find them? And this time it's not going to be cash. It's going to be through transfer. My first question is, we have less than 70 million BVN. All the three of us, I'm not sure we are part of poverty bracket. The people that are really poor, they live in rural community. I've done research in about 26 states that you have real poverty staring you in the face, you know, and they are all spread across the geopolitical zones. They don't even have account number. So how are you going to give money to them? And I'm happy when I hear recently that will not happen before election, because the target was to start by June so that we can have election money to share to people. And that would have been a disaster, a further disaster, because when you remove subsidy, it's a lie to say prices will not increase. Your onions will become more robust, which is inflation in any case. And it's going to have tremendous negative impact on this economy.
Well, to talk about the compare the figures of this administration in the last 7 years, to answer your question directly, Nancy, I think that when we distill the economic indices, you know, truly, you will see that aside policy, this particular administration has, and its economic team is not driving or is not moving towards the right direction. I mean, it took them, I mean, they just only in December or November appointed a chief economic advisor. We have been shouting, even Nancy, on this your program.
We had before.
I've been saying that. Now, you see, when you don't have an economic direction, and you consider things like the conditional cash transfers, all those social safety nets and social intervention as alleviating poverty, those are not poverty alleviation programs. You don't alleviate poverty by social interventions. You create wealth. You do investments. You grow the economy. You provide access to capital.
Can that
you
be
grow
such as like a palliative, like what they call it?
No,
it is not the name that matters. It is how many people are
that
being taken out of poverty.
And then I would like to draw your attention to look. I was asked in a different forum in a workshop where I was talking about the Nigerian economy, and I was making a point that the structure of the Nigerian system is defective. So when you have the monetary policy and the fiscal policy, there's a limit to where monetary policy can go. And then when you distill the monetary policy parameters of this administration, and then you look at things like the total money in deposit banks in Nigeria is about 34.4 trillion naira. And then you juxtapose that to the Nigerian economy that is almost, the GDP that is almost $500 billion US. You find out that it's 6.8%. So what monetary policy can you actually, and then at underneath that, you put what do you call it, the 2.9 trillion naira money in circulation. So there's a limit to which monetary policy can go. Now, in the fiscal side, which is where the issue is, which is policy driven, this administration has not shown any clear terms, any clear road or approach to say, this is where we are going to, and more importantly, this is how we are going to do it.
Is that fair on this government with what you've just said? With the National Economic Sustainability Plan, with the NDP in our development plan,
Nancy, look at the
with
numbers.
The Agenda 2050.
You just called the dollars. You just called the import the dollar. You called it just 416 naira to the dollar. When they came in, it was what, 197. The figures don't lie. Look at. Have you been to the market?
I go to the market.
Exactly. If you by this time last year, what do you call it? A kilo of beef was about 1,200.
Now it's 2,500.
Exactly. You go to the market. So you mean you can have all those beautiful sounding documents and those wonderful names, economic recovery and growth plan. That does not change. It just shows that the policy trust is faulty, is wrong. And even when you look at the structure of the Nigerian budget, you know that it cannot even engender any form of development where you take over 80% to service your debt, of your revenue, to service your debt. So we'd say we have serious problem when it comes to poverty alleviation and growth in Nigeria, that we need a serious government, a government with capacity, with competence, with compassion to engage Nigerians in moving forward, because this country belongs to us all.
Okay, now let's take a look at the inflation side. I think the World Bank said something in 2020 that about 25 million adults in Nigerian households did not eat for an entire day. That was like in 2010. You know, sometimes I have the World Bank report here, you know, because sometimes at least I moderate most of these their economic updates. And when I read these reports, you know, I don't sleep well at night. because of the startling report. And it's not just about numbers. It's about this is what is happening. You get text messages every day. Please, can you give me money for my child's school fees? I've not eaten today. How many can you help? Even as you're also having your challenge that nobody's even asking you of. So the inflation dimension of it, if we have about 90 million Nigerians that are poor, that means that the remaining 110 are not doing, that they are doing well. I don't know if we still have a middle class, you understand. Perhaps 0.1% are the absolutely rich people, So how do we now bring the inflation dimension of it, that the value of the naira which I have, or even that poor person has, is eroded? And that it will move that person into extreme poverty, or what we also call multidimensional poverty.
Well, I think let's look at inflation on one hand and look at unemployment on the other hand, then look at what's happening to the two of them. In 2001, 2000 thereabouts, the National Bureau of Statistics reported towards 2001 that the first quarter report, which was the last figure they reported, it is not just unemployment figure that increased. In fact, the total number of people that were employed reduced from about above 80 million to less than 70 million, thereabout, according to the National Bureau of Statistics. Now, that's one hand. If you have that happen, the question is, we have 33% of people are unemployed. You will assume that the entire population, remaining population, is employed. That's not true. So it's of the labor force. If labor force is about 70 million, and you have 33% of those, you have people, to first answer the question, the economy is not productive enough because you have about 130 million people who are not actively engaging in the economy because they are too young or they are too old. So for the labor force, those who are willing and able to work, you now have 1/3 of them, not being engaged, even though we even need to expand our labor force sporadically to a larger number because of our population.
Issue of the labor force is a discussion for another
It
day.
is
Even the quality of the labor that we have now.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yes.
So when you now say we want to import because we don't have enough labor, we don't have enough power, we don't have enough energy, we don't have enough electricity, we don't have enough infrastructure, and we have to eat. We have to eat. Somebody wants to start. So our options of the kind of people we are now putting to work, which is what is going around universities and polytechnic and colleges of education, secondary school, is you need to be an entrepreneur. I will link it to inflation. Now, what kind of entrepreneur should they be? Own a barber shop. I'm not trying to insult any entrepreneurs. But look at this. Most of the engagements we are preaching to people, they are too small to compete in global space. Too small, too tiny. SMEs. SMEs are very important. But that cannot be our core to bringing us out. And I've studied countries again, and I was shocked to say that what took them out is not SMEs.
So what exactly took them out? I want to understand what you're driving at. Really.
This is what I'm driving at. When you have small businesses, it is because the capacity of the people, that is what they can afford. Government must bring policy and put infrastructure in place such that those small businesses can grow.
So you're saying it's the quality of small businesses that should count, not like having
The
a
number
million barber shops. What will, do you understand?
Eventually we will
what
price
will those
them down.
MSMEs
Exactly. We
dwell
will price
on?
them down from 1,000 per head to about 500 to about 200. Why? Because competition is too much. There are too many competition. So we need to now start having quality such that you don't just have barber shops.
Quality that will reflect the advancement. Advancement of all, yes, even the vision of your country, as it were.
You may want to study what MIT reported, I think 2018 or so. They called it complexity index. Of about 113 countries, Nigeria was rated the least in terms of complexity of what we produce and in most cases exports. What is SME producing to be exported? Is it our yam? Is it our cocoa? Is it our, name it, the hairdressing salon? Is it makeup shops? I don't know if you get my point. Yeah. So what are they contributing to foreign reserve? Are they growing it? India adopted the same policy. In fact, India more or less started this SME thing. But India is backing off. Now, they understood that some of those policies not what took South Korea and a number of other countries out of huge number of poor people to becoming a prosperous nation. We need to look at it. Now, when you now consume and we keep importing, because we are not actually not getting enough dollars, apart from petrodollar, where we are making money from. Where else are we getting money from? And we are still importing. The pressure on Naira will make Naira to continue to reduce.
And that will definitely affect inflation.
Exactly. It will affect everything. I hear that we are being advised to devalue further, even though we devalued. In February 2021, we devalued Naira because of obvious truth. Central Bank cannot continue to defend. What happened? What was the implication? 1 trillion Naira, not my figures, according to the Debt Management Office, was added to our debt profile for borrowing no money.
Okay. I know we can't finish this show definitely today. It's such a huge topic. Policy options, I talked about inflation. What are the obvious policy or possible policy options right now? Is there any staring us in the face to reduce inflation as well as also reduce poverty? Are there policy options that we can take that will be a bit softer? I know I said that will be a bit softer because people will say, okay, take off subsidy. A lot of Nigerians are saying, if you take off subsidy, man, inflation will go high. We will come out and we'll protest. So are there possible policy options that we can take that will be a bit softer? Or is it we must face the hard truth?
Well, Nancy,
very quickly.
I took the liberty of doing a study about inflation and the value of the currency. And I juxtaposed that against most of the administrations that we have in Nigeria. And I found out that we are not paying critical attention to inflation and the value of the currency. Because, Nancy, you can do production, increase production, healthcare, education, schools, and all that. If the value of the currency is not critically maintained in a particular level over a long period of time, you won't be able to reduce poverty.
No, what determines the value of your currency? That's what I should ask.
Exactly.
So there must be something that will determine the value of your currency.
I will take you
there.
You
can't just peg or hold your currency, artificial.
If you study how the Germans rebounded after the Second World War, the German central bank called the Bundesbank, they are obsessed with keeping the value of the German currency. What was that again? Deutschmark.
That was that.
Particularly low, in a particular level. Because what you all of us here know what inflation does to the value of a currency, to our well-being, how it erodes purchasing power, how it reduces bank deposits and all of that. But you see, I think where to look at, because inflation only measures rises in prices. What you should look at is the value of the currency, and what determines the value of currency is simple. There are different metrics to determine the value of the currency. You have foreign reserve metrics. You have what the economists call the purchasing power parity. You have the supply and demand matrix. You have different, but see here what it is. This thing I'm saying to you is my MSc thesis. What I'm saying here, simple, is that when an economy or a government pays critical attention to the value of a currency, its monetary policy and its fiscal policy, its foreign reserve, all other economic indices that protects, show up, i.e. the Naira, in this case, must be on point. So it is policy driven and it is also production driven. This idea of waking up one morning and jacking up the price of petrol, knowing that PMS is the live wire of the Nigerian economy, knowing that one thing that pops up here, 110 Naira increase in PMS, cascades down to even 1 mudu of gari because of transportation costs.
We've got to go, but I see that Paul is itching 30 seconds. Do you have anything to say? 30 seconds,
so
we've got
to
to go
remove
now.
subsidy, because of its implication on inflation, how do we ensure that it doesn't have that much implication? It's for us to have local outputs. We know what we consume on a daily basis. We need to have either modular refineries, the money we want to give to the poor people, give it to those with modular refinery licenses. Within 12 months, instead of waiting till 18 months, we can have some output. Let's wait till Nigeria can produce exactly what we are consuming locally. If not, backtrack 2010. Let's assume there is no subsidy. Government is saying right now we should be buying at about 400 Naira per litre. If you backtrack 2012 because we are importing, the truth is that exchange rate in 2010, if you adopt it to today's exchange rate, without subsidy, we will actually be buying lower than what we are buying.
You are going back
What
to the
does it
value
mean?
of the currency.
Hold
If
on,
you
Yeah.
keep
hold
the
on,
value of the
hold on.
currency
What
constant,
does it mean?
if you keep the value of the currency constant,
You cannot. I will
that's
tell you
400
why.
naira. You can.
So hold on.
I'll
What
tell
does
you
it?
why.
Hold on. You know what that means
Guys,
is that
we've got to
what
go.
we are paying for is exchange rate risk and poor management.
Value of the currency. That is
Okay.
still you are
Of the
paying for.
economy.
That is why they are saying pay 400 naira.
gentlemen. Okay, gentlemen. We've got to go, but we may continue this conversation on another date because, like Paul said, it's an onion. It has so many layers.
Yes.
You know, and we've got to peel them. So many thanks for coming on the program today.
Thank you for having us.
I've been speaking with Adekole Ijogi, who is a political economist. I've also been speaking with Paul Alaje, the lead economist at SPM Professionals. That's the much we can take on today's edition of the program. Be the best you can be and be that change that you want to see. I'll see you all again tomorrow, same time on this channel. I am Nancy Naji. Bye-bye.